Hi, it's Nicole. I mentioned in my last video that I was going to finish reading The Importance of Being Earnest very soon. I have now not only finished reading the play, I have also watched a production on stage in a theatre in Newcastle called Northern Stage. I knew a company was coming to put this on. That was the whole reason why I started reading this in the first place. So in this video, I'm going to tell you briefly what the story is about, but mostly I'm going to share with you my experience watching the show in the theatre on stage and tell you what I think about the production and also show you some video clips and photos. Firstly, the story. The Importance of Being Earnest was a play written by Oscar Wilde. It was first performed on 14th of February 1895 in London. This was the late Victorian period. The marketing blurb on the Northern Stage's website sums the story up quite perfectly. Jack loves Gwendoline, Gwendoline loves Ernest. Algernon loves Cicely, Cicely loves Ernest. However, Ernest doesn't exist. So there are two pairs of lovers, Jack and Gwendoline, Algernon and Cicely. Both men, Jack and Algernon, lead a double life. In Jack's own word, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. In order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who gets into the most dreadful scrapes. Algernon, in the same style, have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. When Jack is in town, he falls in love with a woman called Gwendoline and asks her to marry him. But obviously it is Ernest Gwendoline knows and wants to marry, not Jack, because Jack is in town, so Jack is Ernest. In fact, Gwendoline doesn't want to marry anyone whose name is not Ernest. Jack also has a young ward called Cicely who lives in the country and has heard about this wicked brother of Uncle Jack called Ernest for a long time, but she has never met him. One day, Algernon decides to visit Jack's country house in his absence and meet this lovely girl called Cicely, disguised as Jack's younger brother, Ernest. What will happen now? Both women are now going to marry Ernest, but Ernest does not exist. The play has 3 acts. After all my struggles with Shakespeare, this Oscar Wilde play is very easy, very quick to read. And like I said in my last video, it's very funny. It made me laugh a lot. It's completely ridiculous and unrealistic. A very different reading experience to The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is the only thing by Oscar Wilde I read so far before this. We watched the show in Northern Stage, a theatre on Newcastle University campus. Before this year, when I quite suddenly got into theatres and plays, I paid zero attention to it and have never been inside. It's a very cool building and interesting space. The play is performed by ETT, English Touring Theatre, directed by Denzel Wesley Sanderson. Overall, I think the production is excellent. It's very faithful to the original story, it's funny and very playful. And I love the production is set in the original historical period. Visually, the costumes are gorgeous. I love period fashion. Personally, I think they looked 100 times more elegant than we are now. But that's just my personal opinion. I will show you a few pictures, also from ETT's and Northern Stage's websites. There are 5 women characters. The costumes are elegant and fitting for their different ages and social positions. I especially love Cicely's simple white blouse and skirt. However, I am even more impressed by the men's costumes. In my head, men's fashion, especially for formal occasions, has not changed as much as women's fashion, so it's harder to make an impression. Maybe it's just me not knowing what to look for. But back to our show, the men's costumes are really fancy and full of interesting details. But even more than the costumes, I love the stage and the lighting design. It's so clever and effective. This is what the stage looks like before the show starts, so this is at the beginning of Act 1. It looks like the most ordinary room with solid walls, 3 entrance-exit points with abstract paintings dotted around the room and empty frames on the wall. The room looks plain and slightly boring and feels a little confined at the beginning, but there's a lot more to it later on. If you look at this image, it's the same room in Act 1. Jack is proposing to Gwendolyn under the name of Ernest. Notice the slightly ghostly, scary figure of Lady Bracknell in the background to the right. She's standing outside the room, eavesdropping on the proposal, completely livid. The wall is semi-transparent, possibly built with some kind of mesh material, and the effect is only revealed by the light over Lady Bracknell. You can see another wall behind her, making it obvious that she is standing in the corridor outside the room, but still in the house. Here's the same effect. In this scene, Algernon and Gwendolyn stand in the corridor, and over here Lady Bracknell interrogating Jack. I really love it. Firstly, it makes me feel the director really cares. The eavesdropping in both scenes are not in the original scripts by Oscar Wilde, they are added by the director. They help make sense of the story, they make the audience laugh, and they visually add interest to the stage. Secondly, the second layer of wall creates depths and opens the space up, interestingly, even though it's a wall, and makes the space more intriguing. It's not simply a drawing room, there's a corridor behind, there's a whole house behind. It also makes me look forward to seeing how the space will transform in the following scenes. There's a lot more potential to this space than what meets the eyes at the beginning. The play has 3 acts, but there's only 1 interval, which means Act 2 is cut in half. The problem of this arrangement is that you have to change the scene from an indoor drawing room in Act 1 to an outdoor garden in Act 2 in front of the audience in a very short space of time, and they did it geniusly. It was a treat to watch the mechanical side of things happening right in front of my eyes, almost as fascinating as watching the acting. I loved it. It's like magic. The actors take the drawing room furniture out and push a tree into the middle of the stage. That makes an instant effect. But the overall feel of an outdoor space is achieved by the cooler light in the background, and again, the double mesh walls with flowers and grass along the corridor. I love the look. I'm very curious where the second layer of green wall's gone. Maybe there are different panels? My guess is the first layer of green wall has always been green mesh, as you can see in this image from Act 1. The white bar thing behind is showing through. The first layer of green wall appears green and solid because it's against the second layer of green wall, but the second layer of green wall has to be green, otherwise there wouldn't be any color on either wall. But if you look at the room in Act 3, it's a combination of drawing room inside and garden outside. The first layer of wall still appears green and solid, even without the second layer of wall behind it. I'm not clever enough to figure it out. I'll just believe it to be magic. One problem of cutting Act 2 in half is the changing of the scenes, as we just talked about. The other problem is how to stop the performance mid-flow and restart it again. Because if you put an interval at the end of Act 1, for example, as Oscar Wilde writes it, there's a natural conclusion and an exit. But because the interval is in the middle of Act 2, the director has to decide where to pause. My instinct would be to pause after some characters finish their sentences, but before the next lot come onto the stage. But no, that's why we should let the professionals and the geniuses do their job and surprise us. The first half of the performance stops abruptly mid-sentence and mid-action where everybody is moving and speaking. The light goes off so unexpectedly, but at exactly the right point. Thinking about it now, there really is not a better place, a better way. It's amazing. The actors fit their roles fabulously. My two favorites are Cicely and Algernon, especially in the scene where Cicely talks about their engagement. It's very silly but very sweet. I don't think I can cope with witnessing it in real life, but somehow on stage it's perfectly acceptable and delightful. Overall, I think it's a very high quality production and well worth watching. They have 2 more stops after Newcastle. I think they are in Liverpool right now, and they will end in London in early November. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.